He was just 18 years old when he broke the entire music industry. No boardroom, no investors, no corporate plan, just a computer, a dorm room, and a wild belief that music should be free. In less than 2 years, that belief would make him a hero to millions and an enemy to billionaires. His name was Shawn Fanning, and he didn't just build a website, he built a revolution. It began late one night in 1998. Shawn couldn't sleep. His dorm room was dimly lit by the soft blue glow of a bulky computer monitor, the kind that hummed quietly and radiated heat into the room. His desk was cluttered with empty soda cans, half-written code, and headphones tangled like vines. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling, frustrated. He loved music, hip-hop, rock, whatever you find, but finding it online was a nightmare. Back then, the internet was still young, wild, and painfully slow. Downloading a single song could take hours, if you were lucky enough to find one that actually worked. Most of the so-called music websites were chaotic jungles of broken links, shady pop-ups, and fake files. You'd click a song and end up with a virus instead. There was no iTunes, no Spotify, no streaming, just frustration and dial-up sounds echoing through every attempt. Shawn had spent weeks trying to organize his music collection, but every time he searched for a track, it felt like he was navigating a maze that didn't want him to win. He wasn't looking for trouble, just a better way. But that night, as he lay there staring at the flickering cursor on his screen, an idea began to form. Small, almost silly at first. What if music could move freely between computers, he thought. Not stored on some expensive central server or trapped behind a paywall, but shared directly from one person to another. No middleman, no control, just pure connection. He imagined millions of computers forming invisible bridges, all sharing files instantly, like veins carrying the heartbeat of the internet. It was a crazy idea for the time. The web wasn't built for that kind of freedom yet. Companies were obsessed with control, who owned the files, who distributed them, who got paid. But Shawn wasn't thinking like a businessman. He was thinking like a creator, a kid who saw the internet as one giant instrument waiting to be tuned. He started sketching out how it might work, peer-to-peer sharing. No central hub, just users connecting directly. Every computer both giving and receiving. A self-sustaining network that grew stronger with every new person who joined. He didn't know it yet, but he was laying a foundation for something that would shake the world. The clock ticked past 2 a.m., but Shawn didn't notice. The more he thought about it, the faster his mind moved. Lines of code began to form in his head, each one connecting to the next like lyrics to a song he couldn't stop writing. He could feel it. The idea had energy. It wasn't just about convenience. It was about liberation. Music was supposed to be universal. He thought, something that belonged to everyone. And if technology could make that possible, why shouldn't it? That was the moment, the spark. One restless teenager, one sleepless night, and one radical thought that would soon ignite a global fire. He started coding, line by line, hour after hour, his fingers tapping out ideas faster than his mind could fully process them. The room was silent except for the rhythmic clicks of the keyboard and the faint hum of his computer's fan struggling to keep up. Shawn was in a trance, that rare creative zone where time dissolves. The sun would rise and fall outside his window, and he barely noticed. Sleep became optional. Meals were afterthoughts. What he was building didn't exist anywhere else in the world yet, but he could see it clear as day, forming inside his head. He wasn't a seasoned programmer. He was just a college kid with raw curiosity and enough stubbornness to make the impossible seem inevitable. He started experimenting with peer-to-peer sharing, a concept barely anyone understood at the time. He wanted a system where every user's computer could talk directly to another's. No central authority, no server farms, just millions of people connected in one massive web of shared sound. To make that happen, he wrote a custom interface, a simple search bar where you could type in any song title and instantly find others who had it. One click, and your computer would begin pulling a file directly from theirs. It felt like magic, a system that grew smarter and faster the more people used it. The more users who joined, the more music there was to find. At first, He didn't even think about how big it could get. It was just a side project, something for him and a few friends to test out. But as the lines of code came together, as the bugs began to vanish and the transfer started working, Shawn realized he was creating something far beyond a simple tool. He was building a movement, one that would give ordinary people power over something the industry had kept locked for decades. When he needed a name for it, he laughed at himself. Back in high school, everyone used to call him Napster, a teasing nickname because of his messy, untamable hair that stuck up no matter how hard he tried to comb it down. It was personal, imperfect, and oddly fitting. The program had that same rebellious energy, scrappy, unconventional, and born from chaos. So he named it Napster. The idea behind it was deceptively simple. Connect people directly. Let them share MP3s freely, no middlemen, no labels, no gatekeepers. The beauty of it was in the purity. It wasn't built to destroy the music industry. It was built to bypass it, to let music travel without permission, without profit, without barriers. Every line of code felt like a quiet act of defiance. Every successful test download felt like a revolution in miniature. He didn't have a plan for monetization or strategy or structure, because for Shawn, that wasn't the point. It was never about money. It was about access, about freedom, about connecting a global generation through sound. And as the final lines of his code began to work seamlessly, a single thought lingered in his mind. If people knew what he just created, the world would never listen to music the same way again. When Napster launched in 1999, it spread like wildfire, not through ad or promotions, but through whispers, late-night chats, and word of mouth that moved faster than any marketing campaign ever could. One college student would download it, show a roommate, and within days, the entire dorm would be hooked. Soon, universities across America became the heartbeat of this underground revolution. Students who could barely afford textbooks were suddenly building vast digital libraries of music. Songs that once cost $18 on a CD were now flowing freely between computers. You could search for anything, from underground mixtapes to chart-topping hits. And within seconds, someone somewhere had it. A double click, a short wait, and it was yours. It felt illegal, maybe even dangerous, but also felt thrilling, like tapping into a secret world the record labels didn't want you to find. Every night, dorm rooms buzzed with the sound of downloading, the soft hum of computers, the glow of screens, the excitement of discovery. Students were burning custom-mixed CDs, sharing tracks with friends, trading entire discographies like trading cards. Music wasn't just being listened to anymore, it was being experienced communally. Napster had turned listening into connection. There was something almost poetic about it. A generation that had grown up paying for music was now tasting what it felt like to own the world's library in their pocket. It wasn't about stealing. It was about belonging. The world had never been this connected before. What made Napster different wasn't just a technology. It was a philosophy behind it. It democratized access. For decades, big labels had acted as gatekeepers, deciding what got released, what played on the radio, and who got to listen. But now, the walls were collapsing. For the first time, a teenager in Ohio could share a song with someone in Tokyo without ever meeting. The internet had become a stage, and every user was both performer and audience. And while the people celebrated, the music industry stood frozen. Executives in expensive suits gathered in boardrooms trying to figure out what had just happened. Their decades-old system, carefully built on control, licensing, and scarcity, was being dismantled by a program written by a teenager in his dorm. They didn't understand how it worked or how to stop it. All they knew was that sales were dropping fast. CDs were collecting dust. And no matter how many warnings they issued, Napster's numbers kept climbing. Millions became tens of millions. The world had found something it didn't know it needed: freedom. For the first time in history, music didn't belong to corporations. It belonged to everyone. And that realization, that the people could own the music, share it, live it, terrified the industry to its core. Napster wasn't just a website anymore. It was a revolution with a download button. But freedom always comes with a price. And for Napster, that price came crashing down in the form of one of the biggest rock bands in the world, Metallica. At the height of their fame, They were gods of heavy metal, untouchable, larger than life. But one morning, they woke up to a shock that made their blood boil. An unreleased track, I Disappear, meant for an upcoming mission, Impossible 2 soundtrack, was already spreading like wildfire across Napster. It hadn't even hit stores yet. To Metallica, this wasn't innovation. It was theft. It wasn't freedom, it was betrayal. Their music, their craft, their control had been taken out of their hands and shared by millions without permission. The sense of outrage was instant and personal. And at the front of it all stood Lars Ulrich, the band's outspoken drummer, who decided to make an example out of a platform that had turned the industry upside down. Lars didn't just file a complaint. He went all in. He walked into a courtroom with a box full of papers. The usernames of over 60,000 Napster users who had downloaded Metallica's music without paying a cent. It was a symbolic moment. On one side stood the old world, the rock stars, the record labels, the gatekeepers of sound. On the other stood the new, a teenage coder in a hoodie, and millions of ordinary people who just wanted to share what they loved. When the lawsuit hit the news, the world split in two. To some, Metallica were heroes defending the value of art, standing up for musicians' rights in a digital age that seemed to be spinning out of control. To others, they were bullies, multimillionaires attacking a kid for daring to disrupt the system. Fans who once worshipped them started burning their CDs, labeling them as greedy, out of touch, and afraid of change. The very audience that had built them now turned on them. Shawn Fanning, meanwhile, was caught in the storm. He hadn't set out to provoke anyone. He was quiet, awkward, almost shy when interviewed. He'd say he just wanted to make it easier for people to find music, not destroy careers. But to the music industry, that distinction didn't matter. Napster had become the face of piracy, and Fanning was its symbol, the hacker who had unleashed chaos. Every news outlet had his face on the screen. Teen tech rebel, they called him, the man who broke music. He became both villain and visionary overnight. Praised by users, hunted by corporations, Metallica's lawsuit opened the floodgates. Soon, the Recording Industry Association of America followed. Dozens of artists joined the outcry. The pressure built, lawsuits stacked up, and the lines were drawn. It was no longer just about songs. It was about control, who owned creativity, who got to decide how music moved. Napster had given power to the people, but now the empire was striking back. The industry had found its villain, and his name, whispered in boardrooms and screamed in courtrooms, was Shawn Fanning, the teenager who dared to rewrite the rules of music. As the lawsuits piled up, something deeper, almost philosophical, was happening beneath the chaos. Napster wasn't just breaking laws, it was exposing truths, the kind the music industry had ignored for too long. People didn't hate paying for music. They hated how they had to pay for it. They hated being told what albums to buy, how much they cost, and when they could listen. They hated walking into record stores just to buy a CD for one song they actually liked. The system wasn't designed for the listener. It was designed for profit. Napster flipped that upside down overnight. For the first time, listeners were in control. You didn't need a label's permission to access your favorite track. You didn't need to wait for a release date or stand in line at a store. With a few clicks, the music was just there, alive, immediate, infinite. The kind of accessibility that felt almost unreal. To the millions using Napster, it didn't feel like stealing. It felt like evolution. It revealed something powerful. Music wasn't just a product, it was an experience. Something meant to be shared, not owned. Napster gave people that feeling of connection. Songs moved across borders, across dorm rooms, across continents. A rap track from New York could reach a teenager in Germany before the record label even started international distribution. It was music without walls, fluid, global, unstoppable. And that terrified the industry. For decades, record labels had built their empires on scarcity, on the idea that music was a limited commodity you had to buy piece by piece. Napster shattered that illusion. It proved that people didn't need scarcity to value art. They valued freedom. They valued access. The more the lawsuits raged, the more people downloaded. Every time the RIA issued a warning, the number of users grew. It was as if the rebellion itself became part of the thrill. Teenagers, students, workers, all united by a single belief that music belonged to people who loved it, not the corporations who sold it. Napster's technology was simple, but its impact was seismic. It made people question everything they had accepted for years. Why should music be locked inside physical discs? Why should creativity have borders? Why did art need permission to move? For the first time, the world realized music didn't have to live on shelves. It could live in the air, invisible, accessible, limitless. And once people tasted that kind of freedom, there was no going back. Napster hadn't just given them a new way to listen. It had given them a new way to think. By 2001, the pressure had become unbearable. What started as a spark of innovation had turned into a full-scale war between a teenage visionary and a century-old industry built on control. The Recording Industry Association of America, the RIA, had finally decided to make an example out of Napster. They didn't come quietly. They came like an army. Cease and desist letters flooded in by the hundreds. Record executives stood shoulder to shoulder with their lawyers, ready to crush the platform that had dared to challenge their authority. Inside Napster's modest offices, the mood shifted from excitement to dread. What was once a buzzing startup filled with young idealists now felt like a bunker under siege. Each morning, new lawsuits arrived. Artists, labels, publishing houses, all demanding millions in damages. The RIA accused Napster of fueling mass piracy, of dismantling the very foundation of the music business. But behind the legal jargon, there was something more primal. Fear. Fear that the old model control was dying, and a kid with a laptop had lit the match. Shawn Fanning, now barely 20, watched his creation turn from a cultural phenomenon into a global controversy. The same media that once celebrated him as a digital prodigy had turned their cameras toward his downfall. His face appeared on magazine covers next to headlines like, "The End of Music as We Know It," to the world. He was both a symbol of innovation and a cautionary tale. A modern-day Prometheus who had stolen fire from the gods of music and was now being punished for it. Court hearings became his new reality. He'd sit quietly in oversized suits, his boyish face betraying the fact that he was still just a kid trying to make sense of it all. The RIA demanded Napster shut down its servers. The court agreed. One by one, the digital lights began to fade. The website that had once connected millions now displayed a single message: Napster is temporarily unavailable. But everyone knew it wasn't temporary. It was over. When the shutdown finally happened, the internet felt quiet. The thrill of instant music was gone. Forums went silent. Download bars froze mid-progress. Millions of users stared at their screens in disbelief, as if witnessing the end of an era. Shawn Fanning stood in front of flashing cameras. No longer the smiling college kid, but a weary young man who had seen how brutal innovation could be. The world that had praised him for his genius was now watching him fall. And just like that, the music stopped. But the irony? The world kept listening. Even as Napster servers were unplugged, the echo of what had started couldn't be silenced. In boardrooms across Silicon Valley, tech visionaries were taking notes. Apple watched closely, recognizing that Napster had proven something the record labels never believed, that people didn't hate paying for music, they just wanted a better way to access it. 2 years later, Steve Jobs unveiled the iTunes Store, promising to make music affordable, legal, and convenient. It was Napster's philosophy: repackaged, sanitized, and monetized. Spotify learned too. When it launched in 2006, its founders openly admitted that Napster inspired them. They wanted to take that same sense of infinite access, the joy of discovering new songs effortlessly, but do it within the system. Subscription streaming became the answer. What Napster gave away for free, Spotify turned into a business model. And YouTube, it watched from a distance, studying the power of community sharing. It saw how millions had rallied around music, not because of marketing, but because of connection. When YouTube exploded in the mid-2000s, it carried Napster's DNA: user-driven content, instant access, global reach. Every major streaming platform that exists today, every playlist, every shuffle, every Discover Weekly, carries a piece of Napster's spirit. It was a prototype, the blueprint, the first version of a world where music could live everywhere, anytime, for everyone. The music industry thought they had destroyed Napster. They hadn't. They had only delayed its inevitability. What they really did was buy time. Time to rebuild the same concept under their own control, to profit from the very revolution they once fought against. Napster lost the battle, but its idea won the war. In the end, Shawn Fanning didn't walk away rich. He didn't build an empire. What he built was something bigger, a legacy that redefined how the world listens to sound. He showed us that a song doesn't need a CD case to matter, that a file can carry emotion, memory, rebellion. He proved that connection was more powerful than control. So when Napster went dark, the world didn't stop. It adapted. The technology evolved. The rebellion was simply absorbed into the mainstream. Because once an idea like that escapes into the world, the idea that music should belong to everyone, no lawsuit, no corporation, and no courtroom can ever really silence it. Fanning didn't get rich. He didn't become a Silicon Valley icon. There were no billion-dollar exits, no glossy magazine covers, no red carpet interviews. When Napster fell, it fell hard, and so did the kid who created it. His dream, once the heartbeat of a generation, was picked apart by lawyers, crushed under the weight of an industry that couldn't see beyond its own fear. The servers were gone, the users scattered, the logo reduced to a nostalgic relic. But the idea, his idea, refused to die, because Napster was never truly about stealing songs. It was about connection, about the thrill of discovering something new from someone miles away, about that late-night moment when a teenager in Tokyo could share a song with a kid in Texas. And for 3 minutes, the world felt smaller, closer, and beautifully in sync. It was about breaking barriers, not for profit, but for passion. Music, stripped of walls, drifting freely through the air, reminding everyone that it belonged to people who felt it, not just the ones who sold it. That was Shawn's real legacy. He didn't build a company. He built a movement, one that said creativity should flow like water, unstoppable, untamed, unowned. He didn't have venture capital or powerful allies. He had a modem, a vision, and the courage to believe that technology could set art free. And in doing so, he cracked open the foundation of an entire industry that had built its empire on control. But that's a cruel irony of innovation. Sometimes, being first means being sacrificed. Sometimes, the world punishes those who show it the future before it's ready to see it. Shawn Fanning was too young to know that revolutions often don't reward their leaders. He was too hopeful to realize that visionaries don't always win. They just open doors for others to walk through. And walk through they did. Apple, Spotify, YouTube. They all owe a quiet debt to that restless teenager who couldn't sleep in 1998. They built billion-dollar empires on the digital road he paved, packaging his wild, chaotic dream into something legal, sleek, and profitable. But no matter how polished the future became, it started with Napster, a kid, a computer, and an impossible idea. Shawn Fanning may have lost everything, but what he created outlived every lawsuit, every shutdown, every accusation. Because Napster wasn't a crime, it was a preview. It was a whisper of what was coming, a rebellion that proved music could travel at the speed of connection. And that's the untold truth about innovation. It doesn't always wear a suit or make millions. Sometimes it just changes the rhythm of the world. Quietly, forever. Shawn didn't just change how we listen to music. He changed how we share it, how we find it, how we feel it. He turned sound into something infinite. So the next time you hit play on Spotify, when your favorite song flows effortlessly through your headphones, remember, it wasn't always this simple. There was a time when music was locked behind glass cases, when discovery had a price tag, and when freedom of listening was just a fantasy. But one restless teenager, with nothing more than a computer, a dream, and a stubborn belief that music should belong to everyone, changed all of that. Remember Shawn Fanning, the kid who didn't wait for permission, the one who broke every unspoken rule because he believed that sharing wasn't a crime. It was a form of connection. He didn't have investors or marketing teams or corporate backing. What he had was vision, a vision so bold it scared an entire industry. While executives sat in boardrooms protecting profits, he sat in a dimly lit room rewriting history, one line of code at a time. Every playlist you scroll through today, every song you discover at 2 a.m., every artist who reaches you directly through a stream, all traces back to him. Because before there was Spotify, before there was Apple Music, before YouTube became a new radio, there was Napster, a spark that lit the digital revolution of sound. Fanning didn't just change how we listened, he changed what it meant to listen together. And yet, he never cashed in on it. No riches, no global fame. The world moved on, companies rose, and his idea became the foundation of trillion-dollar platforms. But he remained the ghost in the code, the forgotten architect of the music age we now take for granted. He proved something timeless, that true innovation doesn't always wear a crown. Sometimes it walks away unnoticed, leaving behind echoes that never fade. Because sometimes being too early isn't failure. It's prophecy. It's greatness that history takes years to recognize. Shawn Fanning wasn't just a teenager who built a program. He was the bridge between the analog past and the streaming future. The kid who made music free, not in price, but in spirit. So the next time you press play, take a second. Behind that beat, that voice, that melody, there's a ghost of Napster humming quietly in the background. A reminder that every revolution starts with someone who dares to ask, what if? Because long before music became digital, one boy already knew. Sound was never meant to be owned. It was meant to be shared. What do you think? Was Napster really a crime? Or was it the beginning of something beautiful? Was it theft or transformation? A rebellion or a revelation? Because depending on who you ask, Napster was either the end of an era or the start of everything that came next. To the record labels, it was chaos. To artists, it was betrayal. But to millions of young people around the world, it was freedom. The first time they could experience music without barriers, without waiting, without asking for permission. Napster didn't just give people songs. It gave them ownership of their listening experience. It gave them power. It made music feel alive again. And maybe that's what scared the world so much, that a single teenager could rewrite the rules of an entire industry from his bedroom. No boardrooms, no billion-dollar marketing budgets, just vision, code, and conviction. Because history shows us that every revolution starts small. Every shift begins with someone daring to break the pattern. So what do you think? Was Shawn Fanning a rebel or a pioneer? Did he steal music or did he set it free? Drop your thoughts below, because this is one of those stories that doesn't have a simple right or wrong. It has impact, it has legacy, and it still echoes through every playlist, every stream, every download that happens today. If you felt something from this story, if it made you think differently about where music, technology, and creativity collide, hit that like button. It really helps more people discover these hidden chapters of our digital history. And share this video with someone who still remembers the sound of dial-up internet or burning their first CD. And hey, before you go, check this out. Most of you watching right now aren't subscribed. Like, seriously, most? So if you love real stories about the ideas, rebels, and inventions that shaped our tech-driven world, now's the time. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because the next story might just change how you see technology forever. Because behind every click, every stream, every play, there's a story of someone who dared to dream too early. And those are the stories worth remembering.